Fantastic. Right, well, we're going to move on now. We're going to go on to Grahame Turner from PestAcuity. I think I've pronounced that right, Grahame. Have I? Please correct me if I haven't.
PestAcuity.
PestAcuity. See, I'm all like T's and Q's me. Fantastic. But you're going to be talking about remote rodent monitoring. That's true, isn't it? And I'll let you do your thing.
Okay, thanks very much. PestAcuity, well, acuity stands for or means keenness of thought. So that's where the name came from. I think keenness of thought, or being clever about what you're doing, in theory. So that's where the name came from. But let's get on with the presentation I've got prepared anyway. If I can share my screen.
I'll let you know when it pops up, Grahame.
Good, thank you. Has it popped up now?
Not yet, no.
No, okay. Let me see what's gone wrong.
It's all these buttons, isn't it? There we go. Something's happening. There you go. You can do your slideshow. Fab. That's it. We're ready.
Excellent. Okay, that's good. So yeah, I'm Grahame Turner. Like Dave, been in the industry a long time now, and seen it from all sorts of different angles. So I've seen it from the distributor's point of view, from product development, from entomology research, from the customer's point of view in the food industry, and technical management within the pest control company itself. And for the last 8 to 9 months, I've been a freelance consultant doing training and consultancy, mostly doing field biologist visits at the moment, actually. So what I've got is a presentation on remote rodent monitoring, because I know there's a lot of confusion out there about what you should go for. There's a number of different systems available, more and more systems coming on the market all the time, and people can be very unsure about what it means for them, what they can do for them. So let's have a look. Why do we monitor remotely? Well, I thought I'd start with some risks and benefits of monitoring types. So, for example, you've got toxic, where you might be doing toxic monitoring indoors. Wouldn't normally be doing that externally. Non-toxic monitoring, where you've got the likes of edible bait blocks, or sometimes non-edible bait blocks that can be used to see if you've got activity, and then you go along and put either toxic bait down or traps down. You can have traps down permanently. You can have a remote system that's lethal, so it's traps that are permanently armed, but you do get a signal when the traps are triggered. Or you might have a remote system where the traps are not triggered, or you have a camera system or something. So you at that point go along and then put your controls in place. So those are the different options I've put here. And this is just monitoring, not control. So non-target harm, for example, obviously the toxic baits can lead to non-target poisoning. So that's not good. Non-toxic bait will not lead to non-target harm, but traps and remote lethal can. You can get all sorts of other wildlife going into these traps that you don't want to be controlling. It might be snakes, it might be birds, it might be stoats or toads. All sorts can go into the boxes. So there can be non-target harm, even though it's not poisoning. Product contamination. Toxic baits can lead to product contamination, but none of the other systems can. Delay to death, obviously, particularly if you're using anticoagulants, there can be 3 to 10 days or so delay from using toxic baits, but not from traps. They go for immediate kill, obviously. Offensive smells, possibly from traps, if you're not inspecting those traps very regularly, 4 to 6 weeks or something, but definitely from toxic baits, whereby they go and die in a cavity or somewhere where you can't get at them, and you might get offensive smells. Carnivorous insects, again from toxic and traps, but not from remote at all. Resistance or trap or box shyness, you can get that from toxic and you can get it from traps. no protection. Obviously, if you've got no toxic bait down and no traps down, then you've got no protection. But I've left that green for remote non-lethal monitoring because you're going to be following that straight away because you've got a signal to say you've got activity there. So you've got permanent protection there. A delay to start control. Obviously, if you have toxic bait down, then there might be resistance. So you might have to go along and change it. So you might not get control from the beginning. With non-toxic, obviously, you've got to go and change and put your system down. So that's not control from the start. With traps, then there might be trap shyness or box shyness. So with either traps or remote lethal, you might get some delay to start control. But with remote monitoring, then you're straight in there with a variety of controls. Service efficiency, well, with toxic, non-toxic and traps, then you're having to go in once a month, once every 6 weeks, or however frequently you go in, and you have to check all the boxes. But with a remote system, you don't have to check all the boxes every time because you know where there's activity. And in terms of data analysis, you can do it manually from the first 3, but it's typically digitally and it's already done for you if you've got a remote system. So basically, there's a number of benefits of going for a remote monitoring system rather than a conventional system using toxic or traps, etc. So let's go through some different types and see what the difference between the different systems is. Then, first of all, think about customer remote visual monitoring. You could have a partnership with the customer whereby they go along and check the traps on a daily basis or something to see if there's been a catch. And there are a number of traps that will enable that. So you can have the yellow bar showing through the lid of the trap box on various mouse boxes to see if it's triggered or not. There are some rat boxes like the one bottom left there that has little red flags to say whether traps have triggered in that box. Or you can have electronic ones that give off a flashing light to say there's been a catch. So you could work in partnership with the customer to see whether there's activity. So that's a sort of remote monitoring. It's remote to yourself, but obviously it's a bit hands-on for the customer. Another system could be customer remote audio monitoring, whereby there's this one system called eMitter beep that I'm aware of that's triggered by vibration. So if the trap goes off, it'll set off the beeper, which will continuously beep for up to 3 years to annoy anybody, alert them to the fact there's a trap being tripped. And if you reset it, it'll last up to 10 years. So that is a brilliant tool for using in a cavity or somewhere where you can't get access to it if you're not using a totally remote system. So you don't have to access those cavities. Say it's above a suspended ceiling or in an awkward place to get at. You can put your traps there, and you'll know by the beep whether there's been activity or not, or whether you've got a catch. But moving on to what we mean more by remote systems, which is systems that we can install and we can be totally responsible for ourselves, then one system might be the Bell IQ system. This has a couple of options. It either has traps with magnetic sensors in it, or it has capacitive sensors inside the boxes. Capacitive sensors are sensors like you get in your on your mobile phone, for example, that responds to touch. So that system that goes into the boxes will respond to touch and send a signal if a mouse or rat or an animal has gone into that box. It will collect timestamps of activity. So the system will record the times when there's been a trap tripped or an animal's gone into a box, but it doesn't send it onto the network. It doesn't send it to your phone. That just collects the information, and when the technician visits the site, it'll send a Bluetooth signal to the technician's phone. It could be used again in partnership with the customer, whereby it sends a Bluetooth signal to the customer, and they can then give you a call and contact you to come onto site. But that system can be, it can be very useful. It's certainly a lot better than having to go and check all the boxes on site, because as soon as you go to site, you then know where there's been activity, and you can go straight to those boxes and concentrate on those areas. Then you've got the likes of Romax e-traps. These are hardwired to a control module. The strike bar triggers a physical switch and sends a signal to the control module. And that then converts a signal to a Wi-Fi message and sends it to the network, and then it's on to you. So a system whereby now you are getting a message, immediately there's a trap being tripped, and you can go and reset the trap and remove the dead animal. Then you've got the likes of Bayer digital monitoring, and this uses the Internet of Things with activation sensors, and the traps broadcast their status using LoRa long-range technology. Signals are then transferred to an on-site gateway, and the gateway passes that info to the cloud with real-time notifications then sent to users via email and text message. So that can give you an immediate indication of where there's activity. It can show you the plan of the site and which traps have been activated. I've put these two together, Trap Sensor and Trap Me, because they're both very similar. These now have a built-in SIM card, so they're standalone devices. They'll send a signal straight to your phone, basically, without having to go via a router or a control box on the site. So they have a built-in SIM, and they send you a message directly. And those notifications can be sent to multiple selected recipients. They don't, it's not limited. And a good thing about these ones now is that they'll tell you if there's been a catch or it's sprung with no catch. So it can tell if the trigger bar has not moved all the way to the base of the trap. So you're likely you've got a catch in there, and that can help you with your scheduling. You don't need to go and visit immediately if there's been no catch. If a cleaner has knocked it, for example, and the trap has gone right down to the bottom, then no point in hurrying to the site. You'll just schedule it in when it works with your routing. But if there's been a catch, then you can rush the site and reset it and remove the dead rodent. And from these systems, you can get regular status notifications. So it'll tell you the status of all the traps on the site on the basis that you state. The batteries on these systems does use battery power. They'll last 2 to 3 years, depending on the system. And they can give you an alert when the battery is looking to run out. So we're moving on to a system here that gives you immediate notification straight to your phone when you've got a catch. eMitter Pro, this is another system. This one uses radio technology from the transmitter to the controller and then digital data to the network. And the advantage of that is that it can get through walls and barriers much better than a system where you've got direct going to your phone from a SIM card. If you tried to use your phone down the cellar or in some parts of the rural communities, then you'll know that your phones don't work everywhere, and that's exactly the same as the system on the last slide where you're using a SIM card in the device. It's not going to work everywhere. Whereas this system uses a combination of using the radio technology to get it through walls and barriers and from the cellar up and that sort of thing, maybe with a number of routers as well as a controller, a number of repeaters rather, as well as a controller. So that can work in those situations. But that's then relying on the site then to use their system to get it from the controller up into the to get a message onto yourselves. But again, a very good system. what you'll notice is that none of these systems is likely to be fully suitable for every job you do. They all vary slightly. And so you might need to use different systems in different places. Another feature of that eMitter one I just discussed was there are various boxes and traps that can be used with it. So you've got a RunBox, for example, which has twin traps in it with open ends. If you look at the right-hand picture there, you can see a very wide entrance, and the start of the trap box there uses the natural floor. So there's less reluctance for the animal to stop and decide whether it's going to go in or not. It's just going to run straight through. And it's been found that that can be 8 times more likely to catch mice in comparison to boxes designed to stop mice and force them to make that conscious decision. So you can see in the middle picture there, it's a field mouse there that's running out of the trap. It's already run over one side, but it's caught on the exit. So it's not stopped running at all, but it's still caught that mouse. The eMitter outdoor system, this has signal ranges between 500 meters and 1.5 kilometers. So it will send a signal a long distance by the long range system. And the batteries will endure the toughest weather conditions and can last up to a year in this system. So this can be a useful setup for external monitoring. But there are, so there are a number of systems that will do that now. But what about external trapping? It's not necessarily right in all situations. If we look at the BPCA Code of Best Practice, it says that traps should only be deployed externally after a careful and considered documented risk assessment. So what we're concerned about here with having traps down permanently externally is that you might catch these non-targets that I mentioned earlier of snakes and toads and birds and the like. So you only want to be using them if you're not going to be harming those animals. So there's a lot of places where you can't use traps permanently externally. In my view, they should only be used permanently externally if it's a very built-up area and it's a high risk of getting rats there. And traps can be preconditioned by leaving them unset but baited. Following signs of rat activity, they can then be set. So that's another good system whereby, or another good pointer, whereby you can have the traps there in situ. So if you get activity, there's less neophobia because the traps and the boxes have already been there as part of the system when the rats have moved into the area. So they're going to catch the rats hopefully more quickly when you do go along and set them. But you need to know when there's activity. So you need to be looking for other signs of activity, which might be looking for physical signs when you go and do an inspection, or you might have some sort of remote system that will allow you to detect when there's activity, and you can then go along and set the traps. So as I say there at the bottom, better to have perhaps activity indicators rather than having those smart traps that are permanently armed, certainly in some situations. And here's a system that will do that. The activity is recorded by rats stepping on the treadle. So you've got the trap is left unset and it can detect whether the treadle has been moved down and send a signal. And you can then go along and arm the trap if you're confident it's a rat there and not some non-target animal that's gone into the box. So we're moving on to getting a bit smarter on the traps here in terms of other features. Looking at internal trapping, reasons to separate monitoring from control. Bobby Corrigan in the States found that not all mice are inquisitive, so they're not necessarily going to go into boxes and explore traps and get killed in there. And there might be an aversion to trap sort of boxes, whereby your monitoring and control might fail. So we're certainly seen that in some areas where they might have seen their their mates get killed in a trap or in a box, and so that local population will no longer go into traps or boxes. So that could be an issue. So we might want to look at using motion sensors so we can detect movement or detect the animals moving around the premises. And they can perhaps be combined with sensors to detect traps that do trip. And let's have a look at a few of these sensors then. So it's one called iPest that uses motion and touch sensors. It will only send a signal when there have been 2 positive results. It will then send an alert so that we're avoiding false alarms. So it's something definitely interesting in exploring that box. It collects the time, date, and location of activity and pushes that to the cloud network. So that's one system. Another one, Green Trap Online. The GT sensors, they can either be set for motion only or for motion and vibration, whereby they can pick up a trap going off from vibration. And these can be placed in a box or a tunnel. So you can have just a tunnel that mice or rats are likely to run through and put the sensor on top of there, so they don't have to go into a box. And that can be a big advantage in terms of monitoring activity. You're not relying on the animals going into a box to know you've got activity there. And then when the activity is detected, an alarm is sent automatically to the GT Connect system, and that generates an email or a text, and it's sent directly to the technician. So you can get a message straight away that you've got activity, and you can then go and put your controls, or if you've also got some GT sensors on boxes with traps, then you've got control in place already. And this system can be used indoors or outdoors, and the sensor has built-in batteries that can last 7 years. So it's a long-term system, and it has a lot of benefits to it in being able to use it not just on a box. But there are other systems that you could use that are not just on a box as well. There's the likes of Pest Cam, which is a motion sensor camera, and this will send photos direct to the cloud. So it's not just an ordinary motion sensor camera that you have to go along and inspect once a day or once every few days, whatever, and see if there's been activity. This will send your photos direct to the cloud. It'll store videos on the device. And the batteries on this system will last between 6 months and up to 6 months between charges. So that can be a useful remote camera. Another system, PestOptix. There are a lot of them out there now. So PestOptix, motion activated camera, captures images within a 30-degree radius on each side, and integrates both white and infrared LED for day and night vision, so you can get nighttime photographs as well. This one can do recognition of species using AI as well. You can use this system on insect traps and on rodent boxes to see what sort of insect it is. And it incorporates machine learning, whereby it's learning more information all the time. You let it know which animal it's caught or which animal's been active, and that can help the system learn for future improved recognition. As I say, that the system available now or certainly soon on a wide variety of insect traps, so maybe on a cockroach one like there, or even on a miniature UV trap for monitoring flies. It can recognise the flies that have got caught in a UV trap. And this has batteries, obviously. It uses a fair bit of battery power, being motion activated, and you can charge it using micro USB, and this will send alerts off to the cloud. There is a system with this one, the PestOptix Hub, with multi-sensory design. So it's got a passive infrared mounted in the lid, touch sensors at each entry point, as well as read or switch magnets on the trap. So the little red magnets on the trap bars there will trigger the system to send a signal. Again, off to the network. So it uses a number of different devices. The animals don't have to go and get killed in the traps. They can just go through the box, and it can detect whether they've been in there, and it can send you a picture of what's been in there. Then you've got the likes of Romax Cube, which has, again, a passive infrared motion sensor with 135-degree angle and a high-resolution camera. And this has a 50-meter Bluetooth range as well. So you can have sensors that are connected on traps or on glue boards or something, where up to 50 meters, you can get a signal sent to that Romax Cube, and that can then be sent onto the network and sent direct to your phone. That can use either SIM or 2G cellular network, so it can be used with either that phone card or direct using somebody's Wi-Fi. So that's it's got a couple of options for sending the signal that way. Then you've got Xignal traps or motion sensors, and these are monitoring 24/7, sending an email when it's a change of status. But it can also update the server with a status check every 24 to 30 hours. The data is held securely within a cloud-based server, and it uses either internet connection or activation of a SIM. So again, we've got the benefit of possibly using Wi-Fi system or direct using a SIM. And motion sensor can be used in the box or in a void, etc. So it doesn't have to just rely on being on a box. So a wide number of systems there. But let's consider what are going to be the benefits and what might be the negatives of using each of these different systems. So it's a very quick run through of the systems there. I'm not, I appreciate I haven't gone into a lot of detail on each one, but it's what I want to do really is to get you thinking about what's right for any of your customers, your setups. So let's just have a whiz through some of the considerations that you might want to take to plan which system you're using. So bear in mind that you might want to use a different system for different situations. Let me just check the time, make sure we're okay for time. Okay. So customer remote monitoring first. If we go back to that one with either the visual or the audio monitoring that the customer is going to do for you, that's going to be cheaper than a full system. Can save time over conventional monitoring, whereby you're going and checking every box because you've got a signal there, and it'd be good for helping you build up a partnership with the customer. How about the difference between network or Bluetooth? So network, possible benefits, so you've got immediate notification. It's sent straight to the cloud and straight to your phone. With Bluetooth, the system I mentioned at the beginning there, the Bell system, doesn't rely on Wi-Fi, and it's cheaper because, but you've got the negative of the lack of immediate notification. You're only getting a notification when you go physically to the site, unless the customer gives you a call. How about whether you have it direct or indirect? So direct meaning going straight, via a SIM to the network, or indirect means it is where you go to a controller, and then that will send a message via Wi-Fi to the network. So if it's direct, it could be cheaper because you haven't got to buy the various other controllers and routers. It can be easier to set up. You've only got the traps. You haven't got any other systems to connect to it, and it doesn't rely on Wi-Fi. But the benefits of indirect one, it doesn't rely on signal, so you can use it in those places where you haven't got a phone signal. So again, you might be selecting one system for one site and another system for another site. How about whether you use traps or activity sensors? So benefits of traps, you've got immediate kill, you've got reduced visit time when there is activity, and you've got extended battery life, possibly. But if you've got activity sensors, there's no non-target risk. So you're getting a signal. You can then go and see what the animal is that's been active. You're not using just killing everything that might go into that box. You've can overcome the trap or box shyness because you can have freestanding activity sensors just on a tunnel or totally remote in a void. You'll know where to install the traps when you do get activity. You'll know, exactly where there's been that activity, so you can only install traps there. You don't need to install them over the whole site. And sometimes you can get identification if you've got a camera there, especially with AI, identifying what it is, or if you just get a picture sent to you, you can look to see what activity you've got in the box. And if it's a target rodent, you can then go and set your traps. Consider the trigger type. Is it PIR or vibration or physical switch or magnetic or capacitive? And decide which is right for your situation. Bear in mind, some of them might use more power. So PIR, for example, we use a lot of power. What's the likelihood of being knocked? So if it's likelihood of being knocked, you might want to consider a capacitive or something like that, rather than the standard vibration one that always sends a signal. Local cleanliness might be an issue. If it's a very dusty site, then some of the triggers might not register because it might have got too dusty and dirty. And think of behavioral resistance, whereby they're not going into boxes. So you might not, you might be better off with an infrared system that's just viewing the surrounding area to see if there's activity of rodents moving around. And then if you've got traps, you need to decide whether you want to have it that detects non-catches, which can help with your visit scheduling. So these systems will pick up whether there's whether the trap is set ready, whether there's been a catch and it's not fully closed, or whether it has fully closed, it's likely to be knocked by a cleaner or somebody. Consider the portal or the dashboard provided by the supplier. Is it easy to use? Are there reports on the status of all the traps in the system? Can they be set on the basis that you'd like? What analysis is available from the system? Especially in the food industry now, they're after analysis and trending. And if all that can be done automatically by the system, then that can save you a lot of time. What about the format of the reports? Are they suitable for you? Will they link into your visit reports? Does it work with GPS? Like the picture on the right there just shows, automatically brings up a map to show where the activity is, which of your traps has gone off and whereabouts it is. What traps will it work with? Consider the efficacy of the traps. Do they, are they sensitive enough? Are they a good trap that will work effectively? Are they humane? So if you look at the two traps on the right there, those have a smaller treadle than some traps. The animal has to be right on that treadle, right with its head in the way of the killing bar for that trap to trigger. So that could be considered more humane. And in fact, those particular traps have been tested to a European standard, the Animal and Plant Health Agency, that has determined that those are humane because they'll kill in a short period of time. Whereas a lot of other traps, they might trigger, the head might be in the right place even, but the power of the bar is not enough to kill them within the specified time. So that is something that we were talking about in the last presentation, whereby humaneness is becoming a bigger issue all the time. And there's testing of traps going to be happening, I'm sure, coming up soon. And some traps will possibly be rejected on the basis that they don't kill well enough. So that should be a consideration when you're deciding on a system. How selective are they? And the reason I put the middle photo there in is that particular trap, a rat trap, can have different sensitivity settings that will allow you to select them for just rats, or have a much weaker sensitivity so that it will catch mice as well. So if you're trapping externally, then you might want to set it so it just catches rats rather than any field mice or voles, whatever that might go into the box. Do you have to replace all your current stock, or can you use any your current traps with the system? Think of ease of cleaning the traps. Some of the traps are not very easy to clean because they're a bit cumbersome and got a sort of cover that goes down over the rodent. And how secure is the bait in the traps? So lots of things to consider. What about the power of the system? Is it battery powered or piezo powered? Consider the battery life. I've mentioned the battery life of several of the systems as we've gone through. Are they rechargeable batteries, or do they, do you have to buy new batteries each time? So consider the cost of that, for example. What's the IP rating? Can they be used externally? Can they be used in damp or dusty internal areas? So bear in mind the IP rating of the system. Ingress protection. Is it an established supplier? So if you've got an established supplier, they've got well-tested product. Are the products durable? Do you have confidence in them? You might get fewer wasted visits if you've got a more durable system, a more sort of well-tested product that you're not going to be having callbacks on because it's not working particularly well. And what about replacement if faulty? Is that a possibility? Price is obviously going to be a big one. Bear in mind the initial outlay, the ongoing fee, and whether the traps are going to be bought or leased. Might be possible in some situations. And consider availability. So are the traps and the equipment manufactured in the UK? If it's manufactured externally, is there big enough stock in the UK for you to get equipment when you need it? And can you get spare parts? So lots of things to consider there. Just a reminder as to why we do remote monitoring. Key thing is we've got faster response time. We're not just visiting once every 4 weeks or once every 6 weeks, whereupon we find that we've got a well-established infestation and we've got lots of stock damage or reputational damage because the damaged product has gone out to the end customer or consumer. So that faster response time is a key important consideration. It's more efficient use of a technician's time because they can focus on the particular problem areas that there are on a site, rather than having to check every box every time. And they could maybe still spend the same amount of time on a site, but they can be focusing in that time on the important areas and looking for housekeeping and proofing issues, etc. And that might increase the technician motivation. I'm pretty sure some technicians get pretty bored and don't even look at boxes particularly well. They just open them, stick a date on them without checking the bait or checking the condition of the box or anything. So if they've got a system like this, with a bit smarter, a bit more to it, then my view is that that's going to increase their motivation. They're going to enjoy their job more, which always leads to a better standard of work. It allows them to focus on the areas of highest risk. It allows for data analysis, which is always very impressive to customers, as well as being a requirement of the food industry. So giving them analysis of where they've got problems, being able to show them easily, if there's regular problems in the same place and link that up to why there's a problem there. Gives you a competitive edge as a pest controller because there's still probably a minority of pest control companies that are using them, or certainly some that aren't, so it might give you a competitive edge. And it, in my view, increases the professionalism of the industry to be moving over to remote monitoring rather than just keeping our heads in the sand and doing our 8 visits a year or whatever we have been doing in the past. So we're responding more to current products and the information age, as it were. So my suggestion is that you embrace it, but you do need to consider which system for which site. Okay, I hope you've found it useful. Over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Graham. That was brilliant. You've got a few questions in there, so and we've got a few minutes to get those answered. Now, there's a couple of questions in there about cost, of course, and it can be expensive or feeling whether or not what the price is and whether they're matched. Now, of course, that's going to be hard to answer in terms of pricing because it really depends on the site. But do you see that when anybody that does integrate these systems to any of the sites that it's the customer that's investing necessarily, or do you see them just use standalone on a random basis? What do you see there?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of cost, they can pay for themselves because you can focus on the key problem areas. So whilst you want to look at price, you need to look at benefit along with that. But yeah, look at the price of the different systems because it does vary a lot, and you need to see what's going to be best for your customers, and then look at the different pricing options. And there might be different ways of structuring that and spreading the cost over a period of time for the customer. But yeah, it's definitely a consideration, a key consideration. But I think the benefits generally are going to outweigh the costs.
Yeah. Absolutely. David Barham here mentions about regulations, saying that, we all know that traps should be checked regularly. Same regulations, there maybe is some, but these systems, some of them vaguer than others. But yeah, would you then, if with regards to this interval of check-in, would you skip a site visit just because no phone notification has been received? Surely that would contradict all regulation or guidance in terms of the regular checks.
Well, there is no legislation in terms of when these traps, when breakback traps need to be checked. But and if you've got no catch and you're confident you've got no catch, then there's absolutely no necessity to check them. There are some standards that require you to check traps on a regular basis. So, for example, the Tesco standard requires traps to be inspected at least once a week, which is a bit onerous for a pest control company to be going to visit site every week to check the traps. So they've either got to rely on the customer to check them, or if you've got a remote system, then it does it for you. So you're complying with the Tesco standard, even though you're not visiting site every week. But yeah, in my view, you don't need to check every trap every time you go. If you've got a remote system, you can spend a bit more time if you're spending the same amount of time on site, a bit more time focusing on housekeeping and proofing.
That's it. You can rely on that system as long as it is reliable and you do your proper tests. You can rely on it for those checks, can't you? And log it as everything's in place and fine. Had those conversations before. It's an interesting one, isn't it? But yeah, they're great systems. Here we have it's a great presentation, fabulous, and lots of comments in the chat section as well regarding that. So thank you. Could you shortly explain the radio technology used by the eMitter Pro traps and how specific is the GT sensor system for rodents? Do you want me to break that down? Let's go with the eMitter Pro traps. Just to explain the radio technology, if you.
Yeah, I mean, I won't talk about the specific traps, but yeah, with having radio technology, the key thing is that will go through, will transmit through walls and out from cellars where you haven't got a phone signal. So that will then send that radio signal to a controller, which can then be connected to the internet. That can be in a part of the building where you can get a signal out to the internet. So that's the advantage of having a system that doesn't have a SIM card in every trap, is that radio technology part. In terms of the GT Online, that system, the key benefit of that is that it doesn't need to be on a trap. It can be just in a tunnel that they're more likely to run through. So it's a good monitoring system, and you then go and put your traps, or you could have other ones set up on a trap as well in the same situation.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, fabulous. We've got quite a few international listeners with us. They join us quite regularly, and we've got some with us today. And a couple of them are asking about whether or not these traps are available in other countries other than the UK.
I don't know that, I'm afraid. I mean, the ones I've discussed are generally the ones that are available in the UK from UK distributors. But I think they'll need to do their own research to see what's available elsewhere. They might be able to buy them from the UK. But otherwise, I'm not sure what's available in each country, I'm afraid.
Absolutely. Great. Okay. I think that concludes all of our questions. As I said, lots of comments there saying it's an awesome presentation and fantastic, and thank you. So yeah, Grahame, I extend those thanks to you, and have a great day, and it was great seeing you.
Thanks, Natalie. Cheers, Em.
All right, Grahame, take care.
Bye.